Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webinar, Deliver Valuable Applications Securely in Record Time with SAP Cloud Platform, hosted by SAPinsider and presented by Dickinson Associates. My name is Steve Paul. I'm your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. This webinar is designed to be interactive between you and our presenters. There is no dial-in required. You can listen through your computer speakers, or audio is available via call-in numbers as provided. You can participate in our Q&A session by asking questions about the information presented in this webinar at any time. Just type your question into the text box located at the bottom right of your console. We'll answer as many questions as time permits after our presentation. And later in the program, we'll ask for your feedback. There is a survey once you exit the event. Slides will advance automatically throughout the event, and at this time, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our webinar help guide by clicking on the help link in the upper right-hand corner of your console. Now on to our presentation, Deliver Valuable Applications Securely in Record Time with SAP Cloud Platform. Discussing today's topic will be Olavo Figueiredo, Manager, Innovation and Technology at Dickinson Associates, and Rob Jerome, Vice President, Innovation and Technology at Dickinson Associates. First, we'll hear from Rob.
Great, thanks, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for attending our webinar today. We're certainly excited. Though Dickinson Associates has done many webinars on various topics in SAP, this is the first one that we're doing with SAPinsider, so we're certainly appreciative of that and very excited about it and looking forward to doing more in the future. Today's topic is very important to both SAP customers and to SAP system integrators such as ourselves. The SAP Cloud Platform, in our view, has revolutionized the way the applications are built on SAP. Today, we're really going to focus on agile application development, extensibility, and building custom apps on the SAP Cloud Platform. And what we're finding in today's SAP world is faster time to delivery, larger return on investment in a shorter period of time, and really extending the value of your broader SAP investments. Next slide, please. Great, so as Steve had outlined, we're going to hear from two folks today. Myself, Rob Jerome. I am Vice President of Innovation and Technology here at Dickinson Associates. I've worked with SAP for 19 years, always in the area of application development, data warehousing, and analytics. I'm responsible for one of three lines of business here at Dickinson, specifically innovation and technology, which from our perspective is anything related to database, data management, analytics, and application development. Olavo Figueiredo is a manager within our group, and he runs our SAP Cloud Platform team, and Olavo will be doing the majority of the presentation today and the demonstration. Next slide, please. So we're excited to get into our webinar today, but just first a few things about Dickinson Associates. If you don't know who we are, Dickinson is an SAP Gold Channel partner, meaning we are a software reseller for SAP and a certified implementation partner. We are a mid-size consulting firm headquartered in downtown Chicago. So we have a heavy Midwest presence. However, we do have offices across the United States, and we've done deployments in the US, Canada, Europe, Mexico, and Asia. We have about 150 full-time SAP professionals, and we focus on a blend of SAP solutions, specifically SAP ERP, otherwise known as S/4HANA, S/4HANA Public Cloud, which we were a lighthouse partner for that application, and frankly, analytics, database, data management, and today's topic, application development. We can support our customers in a variety of different ways, and all we do is SAP. Finally, our tagline is business people who know SAP. You'll find that most of our team members come from industry. So we've been on the customer side as well as the consulting side. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Olavo, and he's going to run us through the SAP Cloud Platform and our demonstration today.
Great. Thank you, Rob. So our goal for the webinar today is to give a brief overview of the SAP Cloud Platform. but then specifically go into more detail on application development capabilities and some of the other services that really allow us to build what I'll call better, more functional applications much quicker than traditional methods. So today we'll talk about not only what is the SAP Cloud Platform, but why do we want to develop on the SAP Cloud Platform versus using on-premise or other tools, right? What are the advantages of doing it on the SAP Cloud Platform, and how does it, how does it allow us to deploy quickly, functional but user-friendly applications? So what do we mean when we say that there's now a new, better way to design and develop applications? And then finally, we'll talk about the when. When does it make sense to develop on the SAP Cloud Platform, and how do we identify use cases where it's a good fit? We'll be the first one to tell you that not everything belongs in the cloud, but what we've seen is that there's a lot of applications that, given what we can do with the SAP Cloud Platform nowadays, they're really a good fit for the cloud. So first, we'll go into a quick overview of the platform, but before we get into the specifics, I think it's worth taking a step back and sort of putting things into perspective based on some of the recent technology trends that we've been witnessing and how these are driving what we call today the cloud shift. The first one is big data, which we've all heard of. If you think about your individual digital footprint, where 10 years ago maybe you just had one email account, now we have Facebook, Twitter, Google, Amazon, right? So on the commercial side, we now have a ton of customer demographic data, point of sale data. With the Internet of Things, we now have a lot of device data as well. And all of this data is becoming more and more easily available to us. It's cheaper to store it. So it's really important to have a platform that we can integrate all of these different data sources so that we can analyze them for opportunities. Which kind of brings me to my next point. There's a higher demand for analytics. Now that we have all this data, what do we do with it? How can we analyze this to gain insights into new opportunities, or perhaps identify bottlenecks in our business process? How can we get a 360-degree view of our customers? Companies are more and more looking for this type of analytics capability, and they really need a platform that can support that. We're also seeing faster decision cycles. Companies need to react much faster to changing market conditions. Amazon is a great example of this. When you shop on Amazon, you have real-time access to inventory and product information on thousands of items. And when you purchase your item, it shows up on your doorstep 2 days later. Of course, there is a very robust supply chain network that enables that, but underneath it, there's also a technology platform that really speeds up those processes. So when you look at your business, how do you make sure, for example, that when your customer orders an item, they're getting it as quickly as possible? Customers no longer have the patience to wait multiple days, exchange emails and phone calls before they even get an order confirmation. So how do we integrate our backend systems to accommodate those expectations? Which brings me to my next point, which is user empowerment. Users are getting accustomed to reliable, responsive, and intuitive applications. Especially with smartphones, users now have a lot of power on their fingertips. So how do we make sure that our customers or suppliers or employees have that same level of user experience when interacting with us that they do when they interact with their personal devices? Another trend that's enabling the cloud shift is secure and reliable networks. We almost take internet connectivity for granted nowadays, but with those networks that we have today and the reliability that we have and the uptime, that really does reduce the risk of having your hardware offsite in a secure data center. You no longer have to worry about having that hardware, somewhere in your IT department or, somewhere on premise. And finally, we're seeing a shift towards microservices. Where before organizations perhaps used to develop everything in one big bloated application, we now have developers packaging little bits of functionality into these microservices that are then exposed and can be reused throughout the organization. So these are some of the trends we've been seeing in the industry behind what's called this cloud shift, which, according to Gartner, is predicted to affect more than $1 trillion of IT spending by 2020. So what exactly is the SAP Cloud Platform, and how does it address some of the industry shifts that we've been seeing? Well, if you go by the definition on book, it's an open platform as a service. So that means that not only do you get the infrastructure services, hosted by SAP or now one of their partners such as AWS at their data centers, but you also get access to a variety of services that are part of the platform. So depending on which scenario you're trying to accomplish on the cloud, you can pick and choose which services you need and then purchase these services either as a part of a package, like a bundle, or separately a la carte. So one good example is analytics. So suppose you're looking to enhance your enterprise analytics capabilities on the cloud. You may choose to, one, use the integration service to get your data into the cloud from multiple sources. You can then use the data and storage service to do that data transformation, data storage, and then data modeling, so that data is made into a view that's consumable. And then finally, you would use the analytics service to consume that data. So that's just one example. There's a lot of different solution scenarios you can enable with the SAP Cloud Platform, and they're all enabled by these individual services. And all of these services could probably get their own dedicated webinar. But today, we'll be focusing specifically on the application development and user experience services, which really tend to be the most common used services for customers that are leveraging the SAP Cloud Platform, specifically when they're just starting their journey into the cloud. So the three most common use cases that we see for the SAP Cloud Platform are integration, extension, and building. So to integrate means integrating both technology and business processes into a single platform. And it's important to note this could be SAP and non-SAP data. The SAP Cloud Platform is not just for customers that have SAP ERP systems. It can be used by anyone. And when we talk about integration, it's both processes such as workflow. So for example, if you create an order in your CRM system, you want that order to flow into your ERP system. So how do you integrate those two into a real-time flow to enable your systems to stay in sync? So that's what we call process integration, but the SAP Cloud Platform also enables data integration. So common use case, for example, is bringing multiple data sources into the cloud to have one integrated analytical platform. The second common use case is extend. So if you do run SAP, whether it's ERP or any of the cloud-based solutions like SuccessFactors or Cloud for Customer, the SAP Cloud Platform is really the best way to extend the functionality of those applications. You can do this by building your own apps or by purchasing one from the SAP Cloud App Store, which features over 1,000 applications developed by SAP partners. And then finally, you can use the SAP Cloud Platform to build your own apps. So this is very good specifically for customers that don't use SAP. You can still use the SAP Cloud Platform to build enterprise-level applications to leverage a lot of the same benefits and services of the other SAP systems. So some additional benefits of using the cloud. The first one is obvious, right? It's the peace of mind that comes with knowing that you don't have to manage your own hardware. SAP or one of the partners will do that for you. So you don't have to worry about the maintenance, and typically the upgrades tend to be a lot more painless. Whether they're automated or they're done with just a couple clicks, it's typically much easier to upgrade on the cloud than it is on your on-premise environments. The SAP Cloud Platform also offers flexible subscription pricing. As opposed to traditional on-premise solutions where you pay a large upfront licensing fee and you have some maintenance over the subsequent years, with the SAP Cloud Platform, you pay the same amount every month as long as you're still using the same set of services. So there's usually not a long-term commitment, and you kind of get to pick and choose what you pay for. So depending on what the solution is you're trying to build, you typically only pay for the services that are involved in that solution. And finally, the cloud is fast and scalable. So it's very, very easy to get started. You don't need to provision hardware, of course. So as soon as you sign up for an SAP account, they usually provision a tenant within 1 or 2 weeks. And if you do need additional resources moving forward, let's say that you're your database is running low on memory, or you need to add some CPU power or some additional services, you can simply add those to your tenant very easily. Now, even with all those benefits, we do see from time to time some common roadblocks that can hinder the progression towards the cloud for some organizations. The first one that we typically see with SAP customers is that segmentation within their IT department. SAP and the digital team are often siloed into separate teams. What that means is, typically the SAP ERP team will be one side of the IT department, where the digital team that creates mobile apps or more of the marketing-based content will typically be separated. So, given that the SAP Cloud Platform and its capabilities are still relatively unknown outside of SAP, a lot of times those two silos aren't really looking at what the other is doing. So integrating those two is very important now that the SAP can offer a wider range of capabilities with the SAP Cloud Platform. Another potential roadblock that we sometimes see is that there are different skill sets required for developing apps on the SAP Cloud Platform as opposed to traditional SAP development. With the SAP Cloud Platform, your apps will, a lot of the content there's a lot of templates and wizards and things like that help you get started, but the development does involve some level of either JavaScript or HTML5, specifically with the SAP UI5 library for the front-end development. If you're developing in HANA, you'll be doing server-side JavaScript, or you may be doing Java applications. So those are additional skill sets that are needed. But if you're extending applications, if you're extending your on-premise applications or your SAP applications, you'll likely still need some ABAP development required. And as a former ABAP developer, I can tell you that there is a bit of a learning curve when you sort of shift towards JavaScript and HTML5, but it's not as complicated as it's set to be. And it's once you kind of get in the groove of it, and you see the capabilities of those languages and what you can do with them, it tends to be very rewarding. And we do find a lot of ABAP developers that want to learn those new skills so they can enhance what they can deliver from a development perspective. And the last roadblock that we see is always the business justification. People on the from the IT side, they can see the SAP Cloud Platform and they can see all the benefits that come with it, but that's often not good enough. Typically, when customers want to invest in the platform, they need to have a very specific ROI in mind. It all comes down to how can I use this platform to either custom costs within the business process or pursue additional opportunities. So typically, when customers are looking to invest in the SAP Cloud Platform, we have to tie that to a very tangible use case. Luckily, that's very easy to do. I've never been at a customer for more than 2 weeks where we didn't find opportunities to improve with the SAP Cloud Platform. So now that we kind of had a brief overview of the SAP Cloud Platform, let's dive a little bit more into the application development side of it. And specifically, why does it make sense to develop applications on the SAP Cloud Platform? What is it about the platform that allows us to develop better applications much faster with less risk to our internal systems? And it all comes down to Bimodal Architecture, which is really an industry concept that's been around for a little while. And what that entails is that separation of really the two layers that make up your landscape. So in the middle there, you have the core business system. That is typically the system that runs your business. That's the transactional system. An example of that would be, your SAP Business Suite or S/4HANA or S/4HANA Cloud, right? That's your very reliable, stable system that typically takes longer release cycles to innovate on, right? When you make a change to your core business system, you have to do a lot of testing to make sure you're not going to break anything. So there's usually a lot of risk with making changes to that system. So in order to mitigate that, that's where the SAP Cloud Platform comes in with that outer layer. And because you're decoupling what we'll call the agile innovation layer on the outside from your core business systems, that gives you more room to be more flexible with innovation. So you can typically build applications much quicker in shorter release cycles, because as long as you control how those two systems talk to each other and you use approved APIs and services, you can typically have that peace of mind that whatever you're going to develop on the application layer is going to have minimal risk, if none, to your core business systems. So what does that look like typically for an SAP organization today that may have perhaps has a traditional ERP on premise, whether that's Business Suite or S/4HANA? If you want to customize the system today and develop additional capabilities, you'll likely be using enhancements, or a lot of customers use user exits. If you can, customers like to use baddies because those are typically more controlled. And you're likely developing a lot of Z transactions. Again, all of those items add complexity to your system. So whenever you go to either do an upgrade to your ERP systems, or perhaps when you migrate to a new ERP, that tends to be a bit of throwaway work because that all needs to be redone somewhere else. So that's where the agile innovation layer, which in our example is the SAP Cloud Platform, comes in. It sits on top of your transactional system, and you control the communication between those two by using what we'll call whitelisted APIs, or APIs that perhaps you build. But again, those are very controlled. So when you do something on the agile layer, because there's only so many ways you can communicate with your core business system, you can rest assured that you're really not going to mess things up on your transactional system. And there's also a lot more things we can do in that agile innovation layer. Some examples are you can build SAP Fiori apps, whether that's really installing the standard SAP Fiori apps or developing your own. You can put those apps and other content in the portals, which can then be extended to people outside of your organization. Portals are a great way to reach that wider audience. So when you're looking to expose some of your content and give some functionality to, let's say, customers or vendors or other parties that you don't want to give access to your core system, you can give them portals on the SAP Cloud Platform, and that's a great way to give them those services that they're looking for. Obviously, mobile apps is a great example of applications you can develop on the SAP Cloud Platform with the mobility service. There's also the workflow service that lets you link a lot of different systems, whether that's your ERP or other systems that you have, into one synced workflow. Obviously, there are a lot of analytics use cases on the SAP Cloud Platform. If you bring that data into the platform and perhaps marry that with other data from other sources, there's a lot of use cases around analytics that can be done on the platform. All of that functionality into smaller services that can then be leveraged by other applications. From the integration perspective, if you have other SAP applications on the cloud, such as Ariba, SuccessFactors, or Concur, the SAP Cloud Platform is the best tool for integrating those with your internal systems. But it's not just for SAP. If you have other third-party tools, you can still use the integration services of the SAP Cloud Platform to link them together. And finally, there's the IoT service that allows you to link devices using the SAP Cloud Platform again and bring that data into your overall landscape. So how do we take advantage of this agile layer and develop on the SAP Cloud Platform? And that's when what the service comes in. This is what's called development operations on the SAP Cloud Platform. The service provides a lot of development tools that really speed up the development cycle, leading to much faster deployments. So between drag and drop tools, there are templates and wizards. You can quickly spin up functional, rich-looking, and responsive applications that work on any device. These applications can be developed using the Web IDE, which is a completely web-based development environment that we'll see in a minute that comes with the platform. Or some developers choose to develop using the Eclipse IDE, which is a client-based tool. But either way, when you develop applications on the SAP Cloud Platform, you can leverage the SAP UI5 library that gives those responsive interfaces that work on any device. And they come with that Fiori look and feel that looks great and that we're all used to, that SAP leverages for their own applications. There's typically 3 application types that you can develop on the SAP Cloud Platform. The first one are HTML5 applications. These are basically web applications that are very lightweight, but they still give that rich user interface. This is the same type of application that Fiori apps, the standard Fiori apps, are based on. So very, very simple concept. They usually integrate with some kind of backend service, but they're very easy to use. The second type of application is what's called HANA XS. So these are natively built on the actual HANA database system. They use server-side JavaScript or XO data services to communicate with the database. So whenever you're building applications that are very data intensive, perhaps they have predictive functionality, they're running algorithms, those are typically done directly on the database to really get that maximum performance that you want. And they're done using HANA XS, also available on the SAP Cloud Platform. And then finally, if you're looking at a more robust and you want to develop more powerful applications, the SAP Cloud Platform comes with a Java container where you can do that. So for our first quick demo, we're actually going to go through and show some of the capabilities of the SAP Cloud Platform development environment. So if you see my screen here, this is actually the SAP Cloud Platform cockpit. So this is where you know, I have an overview of all my applications. Again, you can see that we have 3 types here: the Java, the HTML5, and the HANA, which you know, would be on a database system. If I click on HTML5, I can see a list of all of my applications that are currently running. I can see their versions, what their status is, and so on. There's a lot of things to look at here again, but we'll focus on the application development. But as you can see, there are a lot of services that come with the SAP Cloud Platform, and this is not even the full list. So I'll go into development and operations, and then we'll actually go into the SAP Web IDE. If I click on Go to Service, it'll take me directly into that environment. Again, within this environment, you can do all the development needed for the SAP Cloud Platform, which personally is my favorite because I don't have to download anything in my computer. I can just use the Google Chrome to do this. And then for now, what we'll do is we'll walk through a very simple example of how we can create a quick application using some of the templates that are provided. So what I'll do is I'll right-click on my workspace here, and this is sort of my local workspace. I'll do New, and I'll create a project from templates. If I show all the categories that are available, you can see that there are a lot of templates that come with the SAP Cloud Platform. Some of them are more advanced, like the one that you see here, which is the analytical list page. There's the list report application, which is just a very simple report that comes with the ability to drill down in detail. This would be a very good replacement for your typical Z reports out of SAP that's built on ABAP. In fact, we tell all of our customers, if you have the SAP Cloud Platform, you never have to develop a Z report again, because it's so much easier to do it in this application. And not to mention, it looks a lot better. Another template that I like is the SAP Fiori master detail application. And you see this in a lot of the Fiori apps. It's where you have, on the left side, it's a split screen. On the left side, you'll have a sort of a work list of either documents or objects. And then if you click on one of them on the right side, it'll display the details of that object. So we'll go with that one for now. And we'll give this a project. I'm going to call this the sales order tracking application, and because we'll be using sales order data. And then on this next screen, I have to configure my data connection. So I'll select a system. These systems will typically be either on-premise systems or other cloud systems that have OData. Specifically for us, these are S4 on-premise boxes. I'll pick the Demo 21, which is one of our S4 systems. And you can see that there's a lot of different OData services that I can pick from. These are all the services that are exposed by that system. Most of these come with the system. These are standard services, but obviously you can create your own. I'll search for one that's sales order related. And the one that I like specifically is this this one here, the sales order fact sheet. So I'll use that for as my data source. And then in this screen, this is really all the configuration I have to do. If you look here on the right, you can see that it's pretty small, but the screen has certain numbers attached to certain elements, and that tells me what I need to configure here on the left. So for my title, I'll call this sales order tracking. And then for the data binding, this is where you tie the elements on the screen to your data source. So for the object collection, I'll pick sales orders, and for the object title, we can go ahead and do the sales order number. And then for the numeric attribute that would be here on my list here on the left, we'll go with the total net amount of the sales order. And as far as the unit of measure, we'll pick the transaction currency. The next set of data binding elements are for the detail page. So my line item collection will be my sales document item, where the collection ID will be the document item number. For the line item title, let's just go with the material. And then for the numeric attribute, we'll go with the order quantity and the order quantity unit. And that's all I had to do. So now when I click finish, the web ID is actually putting together this application for me in the background. And we'll see that momentarily here on my workbench. And there it is. So if I open up the sales order tracking app, I can see that it has a pretty common structure that's similar to other web applications. And if I wanted to modify this application further, I would do it here. But the important thing to note is that this is a very, very good starting point. The SAP Web IDE has already created all these folders and files for me, and they make it very easy for me to go out and edit them. And I can also run this application directly from the Web IDE. So I'll go ahead and click on the green arrow button, and then we'll actually open another tab where I can see the application. Okay, so that took a little bit to load because it's the first time we're running it. But you can see that we have most of our product complete here. On the left, we have all of our sales orders with the net amount for each one of them. And on the right here, we can see the detail of each sales order, including the material number and the quantity. Again, you can see where the Web IDE left some places where you can easily change certain descriptions, and that can be done on the application. But the important thing to note here is that that Web IDE takes you this far already, within minutes of configuring this, and this is all real data coming back in real time from our backend system. If I go back into the Web IDE, if I like this application, it's as easy as going to deploy, and I can either deploy it to an ABAP repository if I want this to go back to a Fiori on-premise environment, but more importantly, I can deploy it directly to the SAP Cloud Platform. So not only will it go there, but I can also register it to a Fiori Launchpad, so it could immediately be rolled out to be used by the users. So that just sort of highlights, how easy it is to develop with the Web IDE. Again, you can see just in a few minutes how I can put together a front-end application given a data source. Again, as a previous ABAP developer, I like this approach much better than developing, directly on ABAP. And not only is it easier, faster, you have more functionality, but also the application obviously looks much better. Okay, so now that we're going to shift gears a little bit, we've done a brief overview of the SAP Cloud Platform and specifically how to develop apps on it. but that we haven't really gotten to our main point, which is how do we bring all of this together as part of a development life cycle where we can very quickly design and deploy applications while keeping the user experience in mind. And that's really what we're calling sort of the new way to design and deploy applications. And it all starts with the user in mind. For those of us who have been around for a while, you may remember the days where where we would run into issues with our applications, and when we called IT, the first standard response that we heard was that's a user error. You're not using the application as I intended. How can you not know what I had in mind when I developed this application? It's your fault, right? Nowadays we just absolutely cannot get away with that anymore. Applications like Amazon, Facebook have really raised the bar on what users expect in terms of usability. So when you go on Amazon, right, you don't need an instruction manual to use that application. It's just intuitive. You just know how to use it. So, I mean, can you imagine if for example, if a user couldn't figure out how to use Uber, for example, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. If the user can't use that application, Uber just lost a customer. So we don't want that lack of usability affecting our own applications, right? Whether those applications are towards our customers or our employees. If we have an employee that can't use an application, right, now he's probably not going to get frustrated. He's not going to use the app, and perhaps he's not going to follow the correct business process, right? He's going to start doing his own thing. So it all comes down to the usability of the application. So as a developer, the thought now is, if a user can't use my application, then I probably didn't design the application intuitively enough. We all know that developers think very, very differently than users. So it's important to really put yourself in the shoes of the user and kind of walk through his perspective when you're developing these applications. And that's what we call the user-centric design. Before we even write a line of code, we sit with our users and we kind of go through a process so that we know exactly what they're looking for and what that end application is going to look like. And the reason we do that is, so we're avoiding what we call costly design mistakes. As I mentioned before, right? We don't want to develop an application, show it to our users, and then later on in the process find out that it's not what they're looking for, and have that lead to issues in our business process. So we start with the user in mind, and then when we start developing an application, we're constantly getting feedback from the users, and that starts very early in the process. So we're avoiding the lengthy waterfall deployments where we sit in our own desk for 3 months and then come back with an application. We're constantly developing and getting feedback from our users as the process is going. And that sort of goes into the concept of design thinking, right? We talked about this before, but we start with the discovery. We really try to explore the problem and the process from the user's point of view. And this, I think, is very, very important. So we've sat with a lot of IT departments in the past, and we kind of ask them, hey, what are you using today? How's your application? What are the problems that you're seeing? Can we go and talk to users? In IT, sometimes we'll say, no, we got the process. We have our standard operating procedures. This is how they do it. But then when we get down to the shop floor or the warehouse and we sort of walk through the day in the life of the user, we typically see that they actually use the application and the whole solution much differently, and their process is very different. So it's very important that we go to the ground level and really get that perspective from the people that are using the application. So once we have that, we go to the design stage. And this is where, we really get creative and we look for alternate ways to solve our problems. Obviously, you need to put some guide rails in there so you're not, developing things that aren't realistic. But this is where we encourage both users and IT to look for creative ways to solve the problems. But again, always providing that guidance on what's possible. And once we've done that design workshop, we actually turn that into a prototype, which we'll see what that looks like here in a minute. But the prototyping is key for sort of tying the circle together there, because we listen to our customers, we talk to them as to how they want to do things into the design, but then we show them what that application is going to look like in the end through a prototype, and that sort of really helps advance the discussion by visualizing what that application may look like. And that's where the build tool comes in. So the SAP build tool is a tool that comes with the SAP Cloud Platform, and it's used for rapid application prototyping. It's a code-free drag and drop tool that quickly lets you put screens together, sort of to design the overall look and feel and the screen flow of an application. Again, comes back to the user, right? So we start by defining the user experience, and then we focus first on the look and feel of the application, so that the user really knows what it's going to look like in the end. They have a good idea of how it's going to function. Where are the buttons going to be? What is the screen flow going to look like? And again, we do all of this before we do any write a single line of code. And what we see that that really enhances collaboration across the board. So when the users, with this tool, right, when we build the prototypes, we can actually invite the users to come and play with it. And we give them a URL, and they can share it with whoever they want in the organization. And they can really take their time and go into this tool, click around, go to the different screens, and actually even leave comments within that screen about the things they like and they don't like, which we'll see here in a minute. But in these prototypes, like I said, can be easily shared within the organization. So with that, we'll go into our second demo here, which is where we'll highlight the build prototyping tool. So if I log in, I can see all my projects, which really are prototypes. If I want to create a new prototype, if I'm developing a new application, it's as easy as going into the new project. And I'm assuming that I need to refresh to it re-enters my credentials. So if I go to new project, I can see that there's a lot of, again, with the SAP Cloud Platform, you always have templates to start with, right? There's no need to do anything from scratch. You can see there's a lot of prototype templates that I can get started with. It sort of kind of gets me to my end goal. So I don't have to start prototypes from scratch. In fact, we use this gallery very often. So instead of creating a new one, I'll actually show you one of the ones that we've done in the past. And that's our distributor portal. This is a prototype we put together to simulate what a distributor might use as far as an application. If they want to order, in our example here, let's say that we have a distributor like a car dealership, and they want to order a car from the manufacturer. This is a use case we've done a lot in the past, not specifically to cars, but to extending portals to customers so they can order products on there. And this is where we define the page map and the screen flow. Right, we can see that we start with the main page here. They go into the model selection, and then they can build their own model if they want to, or they can order one from inventory, and then finally they confirm that. So we'll actually step here in this first page to show you what that looks like and how easy it is to edit these prototypes. So you can see here I have outlined all the different UI elements on my page. You can use pictures. There's a lot of search boxes, and there's tables, logos, and the great thing is that all of these UI elements that you're working with here, they correspond to real UI elements in the SAP UI5 library. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but that makes it very easy to take this prototype and actually create an application out of it in the SAP Web IDE, so you can start developing it from there instead of doing it from scratch. And then if I want to add elements to this prototype, it's easy as, going to my control selection here on the left, clicking on, for example, a button and bringing it on my screen. And then I can then configure different options for my button, what do I want it to do. And if I want to, see what this looks like, there's a preview option that I can click on. And with this, I can click through my prototype, and I can see that I can navigate to the different pages. And I can even show what that would look like on a tablet or a mobile device. So this would be the tablet view, for example. So it really kind of lets you preview what this application is going to look like. Again, this is all done without writing any lines of code. So typically, we'll work with our users in IT to develop these prototypes. But where this build tool is really useful is when it comes to gathering that user feedback. So if I return to my prototype here, and I'll actually show you guys how you can create studies and really facilitate gathering that user feedback. So for this prototype specifically, we created a study and we invited some users to provide feedback, and I can see those results here if I go into my study tab, and I can see all of the different parameters of my study. I can see that 4 people ran through this prototype. The average time was about 10 minutes. We got a lot of comments on the prototype, and the reactions were mixed, mostly positive, but we definitely had some negative feedback on there. If I go into my questions and I actually click on the prototype, I can see exactly what the comments are and where they put them. So if I go into, if I click here on comments, you can see that on my screen now, I can see where all my users left different comments about the application. So Mark, for example, thought the layout was colorful and simple. Someone else said something about the search bar. So I can browse through those comments and apply them to the next iteration of my prototype. Again, always going towards that end goal of making that application exactly what the users are looking for. And not only on the screen can I see the comments, but if I click on heat map, I can see exactly where all the users clicked. For example, in this screen, I can see that a lot of users clicked on the word of the product category as opposed to the picture. So as a developer, I can say, maybe I should make that word a hyperlink and not just have the picture be a hyperlink, but also put the word on there to improve the usability of the application. There's a lot of other tools that are available with Build, but that, really what I wanted to focus on is how easy is it to build a prototype, but also how easy it is to get feedback from users, which is in the entire design and development lifecycle, we find it's very crucial step and usually leads to much happier users. And we tend to get the application right the first time when we go and start developing. Okay, so now that we've sort of talked through what exactly, how do we use the SAP Cloud Platform and how does that fit into the design lifecycle of an application? How do we determine when we should use the SAP Cloud Platform, and where can we identify opportunities, or how can we think of ways to leverage this platform to really provide better applications to our users? And when we sit with customers, we typically look for certain indicators or symptoms that tend to lead to an opportunity or somewhere where we can leverage an application. So the first one is pretty obvious: outdated user interfaces. So if you have any applications that whether they run on ABAP or some other .NET tool, and you're getting a lot of complaints that it's very outdated, it's not very user friendly, that's typically a good opportunity to move an application like that on the SAP Cloud Platform. Mobile access requirements fits right in with that as well, right? If you have an application or a solution that's not mobile ready, that's a good reason to move it to the cloud. If you look at your business processes and you find anything that's very manual or inefficient, requires a lot of redundant data entry, or you have over reliance on spreadsheets, emails, or phone calls, those are also all very good use cases that can be made much more efficient by building a set of applications or one application on the SAP Cloud Platform. We've done this a lot of times, with those use cases in mind, because it's very easy to prove on ROI if you're making the business process more efficient. If you're trying to avoid, bloated or applications that are very high maintenance, you can always switch those to the SAP Cloud Platform. We've talked about the portal. If you want to build apps that reach a wider audience, let's say, for example, you want to build applications so that your customers can enter orders through an app as opposed to having to call you every time, or have to call you every time they want to have a question, when they could simply go to an app and get that information themselves. Those are very good use cases for the SAP Cloud Platform. And finally, we talked about upgrades. If you're planning on upgrading your system, or more importantly, actually migrating your system, let's say, for example, if you're running SAP Business Suite and you want to migrate to S4 eventually, all the work that you do on a SAP Cloud Platform is still going to be there, as opposed to all the work that you do on your current system is going to be throwaway. So if you develop your custom apps on the SAP Cloud Platform, when you do migrate to that next system, it's just easy as switching your OData connections to point to that new backend system. And a couple more tips, when you're looking to identify use cases for the SAP Cloud Platform, we talked about the first one, which is the business value is critical, right? Simply making your landscape better is not good enough. You almost always, when you talk to a CFO, right, the first thing they're going to ask is, what's my ROI on this? And fortunately, that's typically very easy to prove, and we've done that with customers before. And you also obviously listen to your users and your customers, right? Again, I've never gone to a shop floor or a warehouse, and I've never been at a customer for more than 2 weeks where I haven't identified an opportunity to improve a certain process. There's always pain points. There's always opportunities to improve. And finally, we encourage users or our customers to think big and small. We've done, very large solutions on the SAP Cloud Platform. Like, for example, we've optimized entire order to cash processes, right, with a set of maybe 10 or 15 applications that sort of touch a wide audience of users. That certainly can be done on the SAP Cloud Platform, but we also encourage our customers to think small. Think of micro apps. If you talk to Jane at accounting, for example, or someone at the warehouse, right? Maybe they're spending 4 hours of their day just putting together spreadsheets or doing very manual processes. Maybe you can build an app that allows them to save that time for something else. Again, the impact there is not very big, but because you can develop these applications so quickly with the SAP Cloud Platform, although your ROI is not, you're still going to get a very good ROI because your cost of development is very low. And finally, if you're really looking to, you're trying to think of different use cases, we invite you to look at the Dickinson Associates Fiori Launchpad. It does require a brief registration where you just have to put in your name and some basic information, but it is open to the public. And if you want to go in there and try some of our prototypes, including the distributor portal that we just showed on Build, you can just simply go to that URL there. And then that's a real SAP Fiori Launchpad, so you can get an idea of what the look and feel of an SAP application on the SAP Cloud Platform would be. So with that, that brings the end of my presentation. So I think, Steve, we'll open it now for to see if you guys have any questions. I think we have some time left. So we'll answer some questions.
Okay, very good. Thanks. Excellent presentation and demo. Before we go to our audience Q&A, just want to remind our audience that we do have a feedback survey at the conclusion of the webinar. We'd greatly appreciate it if you could fill out that survey and give us some feedback on what you thought of today's event. Now on to the question and answer portion of our event. As a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, just type your question into the text box at the bottom right of your console. And we do already have a number of great questions, so let's get to this. First off, from David, who wants to know, so even without an SAP system locally, we can create a Fiori app in SAP Cloud and make it available to the business?
Absolutely. So when we think about the terms can be kind of confusing. When we think of Fiori apps, we typically think of the standard Fiori apps that are made available by SAP. Depending on what version of SAP you're on, you'll have a different number of applications available. But really, what a Fiori app is, it's an HTML5 application that uses the Fiori design guidelines. So even if you don't have SAP as your backend system, maybe you have a different source of data. Maybe you're storing data directly into a database. We've done a lot of apps like that where, for example, we don't have an SAP backend. We have a front-end application has that Fiori theme that's on the Fiori Launchpad, but our data source is a HANA database. for example, right? Maybe we've done a lot of apps like that that are much simpler. Perhaps they don't integrate into the ERP workflow. We're just basically getting some data, storing them locally. You can put those applications, you can build them in HTML5 on the SAP Cloud Platform and put them on the Fiori Launchpad, actually right next to other applications that perhaps talk to a whole different system. One of the benefits of the SAP Cloud Platform is that if you have multiple on-premise systems or cloud systems, you can bring all those apps together into one Launchpad, and that really gives your users, one integrated experience, and they don't even care about what system they're talking to or really where their data is going, as long as they have that portal. So I guess, yes, to answer your question, you can certainly do that.
Okay, thanks very much. Jennifer wants to know, what does a typical project look like, and what are the needed skill sets, and how long would it take?
Sure. So the boring answer, obviously, is it depends on the project. Typically, some of the projects that we do usually average about 3 to 4 months. We'll typically have a development team that will consist of an ABAP developer, and then maybe 1 or 2 SAP Cloud Platform developers, where one developer will typically focus on the UI development while the other one does the backend database and configuration of the platform. If the solution that you're trying to deliver works directly with one of your business processes, let's say we've done a lot of apps that really modernize and sort of optimize, let's say, for example, the order to cash process, right? When you're talking about giving your customers a portal where they can order products from. Typically for that type of project, aside from the developers, you may need a functional resource that not only knows the business, but also understands the sales and distribution process in the back-end SAP systems. You'll typically need a project manager, but again, it depends on the size of the project. We've done very small projects where we basically built an app within a couple of weeks, and that was just a single developer working on it. Again, going for those quick ROIs. So really it depends, but it's typically a combination of skill sets. On the development side, right, you have the HTML5, JavaScript, but you also typically need the ABAP for the backend as well.
Okay, thank you. And then let's squeeze in one more here. Can you talk a little bit about mobile development, and do these apps work on any mobile device, or do I need to develop them in iOS or Android?
Yep. So that's a great question. We didn't really cover mobile. And this is one that kind of can be confusing at times. So all of the applications that we develop on the SAP Cloud Platform, again, because we're following those Fiori guidelines, they will render on any device. And we typically develop them using responsive UI control, so that when we're developing these apps, we don't have to develop one application for a PC, but then another application for the same thing, but that would render on a phone. We just develop one app. And again, if you use the right UI controls, they'll render on any device. So, and that's typically all we need to do. However, some customers have some additional requirements where we may need to develop a mobile application. You can certainly do that with the SAP Cloud Platform. Some of those requirements typically are, so let's say, you need to develop an application that has offline requirements, or you're really looking for that for a specific user experience. Maybe you're building a consumer grade application, right? And you want, and you really want that, so let's say, for example, that experience that comes with the Apple products. So you may choose to develop your application on Xcode using the Apple SDK, and tie that into your systems with the SAP Cloud Platform. You can certainly do that as well. In fact, Apple has a software development kit that's specific to Fiori that really facilitates developing native iOS applications that talk to the SAP Cloud Platform, and then they still have that look and feel of a Fiori transaction. So you do have both options, but the important thing to note is most customers, they can still just develop the regular applications on the platform, and those will render on any device.
Okay, thanks very much. Excellent Q&A as well. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this session. So if we didn't get to your question during the live broadcast, someone will follow up with you over the next few business days. And again, for more information, You can see the slide here before you. We want to thank you for attending today's webinar, Deliver Valuable Applications Securely in Record Time with SAP Cloud Platform, hosted by SAPinsider, presented by Dickinson Associates. Shortly after this live event, we'll send you an email reminder so you can access this presentation on demand. And on behalf of our guest, Olavo Figueiredo, Manager, Innovation and Technology at Dickinson Associates, and Rob Jerome, VP, Innovation and Technology at Dickinson Associates. We want to thank you for your time and have a great day.